Welcome to the Unscripted Authentic Leadership podcast, a podcast where we are seeking to lead change while also seeking to understand. I am your host, Lafayette Lane, joined by my co-host, John LeBron, and we are here for another week and another exciting episode to bring to our audience dealing with different aspects of authentic leadership. First, before we get into the topic, we definitely want to say thank you to all our listeners and those who have been tuning in and supporting us uh, either from week one or whether you're a new listener, those of you that have been subscribing to our YouTube channel, you'll see that at the bottom of your screen there, Unscripted Authentic Leadership, where you can find full podcast episodes. You can also find video clips from excerpts from the podcast episode that we call the Unscripted Reel. And those of you that have been following us on Facebook, our Facebook page there is Unscripted Authentic Leadership. Those who have been liking and following us on Instagram at Unscripted Leadership, or whether those that are streaming on the various podcast platforms, whether that be Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Buzzsprout, to you, we say thank you. We're here for another week, and before we get into the topic, you know how we do. I just want to check in and see how everything's going with you, John, and things are going good my way. Have some exciting things going on, and this 2020, it seems like, has sped up the last quarter here. So just trying to keep on pace, and I know life is busy for me, and I'm sure it is for you. How have you been, bro?
I'm good. The second half of 2020 is making up for the first half in productivity, I think. So
Absolutely.
It's good. It's a good thing. Yes. And you do have a lot of great things going on. So that's super exciting. I can't spill the beans, but I'm really excited for you. So,
Man, listen, I appreciate it. Those of you that don't know, we might as well go ahead and put it out there.
yes.
I will be getting married in a few weeks, so I am excited. Those of you will have to do an episode with both our wives and our kids, man, so our audience can get to know them as well. And so we're excited about that. Those of you that have been tuning in know this month we've been talking about voting, and our November series has been on voting. Last week we talked about your vote matters, the different aspects of why voting is important, how you can vote, and the differences between traditional voting and absentee ballot voting. If you have not listened to that episode, I strongly encourage you to do so. We're going to continue along those same lines today, but we're going to talk about what's the facts. Those of you know that we live in an information age like never before. Information is readily accessible, readily available. We don't have to go. I can remember, and I'm not that old. I'm only 26 years old. I can remember when I was in elementary, you have to go. You had a book report that you had to do. You had to go to the library, try to hurry up and get your reservation, make sure that your classmates didn't get the book that you needed, so forth, so forth. You got a book report now, you don't have to leave your home. There's this thing called Google. There's the internet. There's so many different resources. You don't need to go and search through the encyclopedias and try to find the right one. You don't need a library card. I can't remember the last time I went to the library. And so it's kind of crazy. But we live in an information age. And so there are pros and cons to having so much information that's readily available and accessible, because everyone's opinion can be inserted. And sometimes because of the opinions and the assertions of people, it's hard to decipher what's the facts and what's opinion, what's propaganda, and what's real and what's not. And so when it comes to voting and things of that nature, and the voting cycle, and being informed about candidates, being informed about presidential issues and issues of community issues, issues that affect you personally or those in your community on the local level or even a state level or national level, it's important to be able to decipher what's real and what's not. And we know that there's pros to media and there's a lot of cons to media. And that can be on various levels, whether it's the news or the media that's mostly us millennials use. It's the social media, avenue. And so I know that's really where I get most of my information, or you see a lot of um, headlines. You find it out on Facebook. I don't really watch WHIO or Channel 7 News. I see it on Facebook. And so when I see something that happens on Facebook, then I can go study it and look into it further. And so it's important. We want to provide that information to help you further. So how can we decide what's real and what's not? And so we kind of just want to get into that, dealing with that as far as the voting, since we are only 23 days away from that, and we know early voting is open now, but the official day is 23 days away, and so we don't have much time. We want to make sure our audience is well informed so they can make a well informed decision. So the first thing we kind of want to get into is how can we study a candidate without the filter of media influencing your perspective. Media is a huge influencer. And we live in a world of influencers. And a lot of time, people, you don't know what your own conviction is and what your own moral compass is because you're being guided by a political agenda, not even a political party, but an agenda of someone that's trying to sway you to the left or to the right, and it's hard for you to make up your own mind. And so there are 7 steps that I really want to go over as far as judging candidates. The first step is trying to determine or determine within yourself, what are you looking for within a candidate? What are you looking for within a candidate? And so you can judge a candidate within 2 ways: the position they take on issues and the leadership qualities and experience they bring to that particular office that they are posing to run for. And so the first step in doing that is picking a candidate, deciding what issues that you care about and the qualities that you want in a leader, not vice versa, letting the candidate pose onto you what they think that you should think is important. But researching and searching within your own self and asking yourself, what's important to me? And does this particular candidate line up to what I am looking for? And so we know when we are considering these issues, whether it be in your community, your state, or national level, is the particular candidate that you are considering voting for, do they address these issues on any of those levels? What are the boxes that they are checking for you? Some of us are interested in national security, government funding, student loans, climate change, police brutality, government assistance, and things like that, the school system. So you have to take away the, are they Republican? Are they Democrat? Are they liberal? Are they conservative? And say, I'm going to take that away, take that, remove that from from your perspective, and look more at, do they align themselves, whether they're red or whether they're blue, do they align themselves with what you care about the most? What leadership qualities do they have? What characteristics do you think they have that will make them effective as an elected official? Are you looking for someone that has a certain level of intelligence, someone that operates with integrity, someone that operates with humility, is a great communicator? What are you particularly looking for on these issues, and what qualities matter to you the most, more than the party, the issues, and what does that candidate speak mostly to you about what you care about, and how can they best service you? Because at the end of the day, they are public servants and they are here to serve. And so, John, when you think about determining what you're looking at for within a candidate, what are some things that come to your mind when determining how to filter without the absence of media influencing you? What are some things that you look for in the candidate when you are going to that voting?
Yeah, so it's so important, guys. What happens most often is we you see it all the time. We get kind of lazy with our voting. So what happens is we vote for an individual based on Republican or Democrat because we write straight ticket, R's or D's. And then when that candidate gets elected, and then even as they if they perform subpar to what you were hoping, what happens is we almost take it like it's, we have to defend the candidate, right? And then it's like, well, they're doing that because this, or it's okay because the other guy, yes, he's doing this, doing a terrible job, but the other guy was this way. It's no longer about the previous candidate, right? We have to start holding these candidates' feet to the fire and saying, look, you said you were going to do this. We elected you for that. And here's what you're producing. And it's not what you said. So, but most people don't, unfortunately, and I don't know, I shouldn't say most, but a lot of people don't vote for candidates based on their stances on issues, or they think they know their stances, but they never actually looked into them. So, studying candidates is so critical. Most of the time when we select a candidate, it's like based on feelings, right? Which is very irrational and very inconsistent. And our views are often a reflection of like our association. And so, which comes from probably media, family, coworkers.
Sure.
So to study them, you need to start getting their views on stances and things that are important to you. So like I may look into the candidates' views on like abortion or something like that. I know it's a very heavy topic, but it's something that's important to me. So I would look into that. How do they view on this? Because that, to me, that tells me how they view not just for me, it's important because it tells me how they view like life. What does life mean to them? And I know it's a very controversial topic that we could get into maybe one day in the future. But so whatever. But maybe there's I would look into their views on taxes, right? Government. Do they believe in larger governments or smaller governments? Things of that. Those are things that I view as important. And then there's a lot of other topics too. No candidate will ever be perfect, and that's okay. Nobody is perfect. So the fact is they don't have to check all of your boxes, but that's why you're studying them. I like to use a website called ontheissues.org, ONTHE issues, ontheissues.org. And you can use that and look at specific issues for each candidate and see how they have either voted in the past or things that they've done that have shown how some may say they stand a certain way, but they voted one way or the other, or they've taken action against what they've said. Well, this website will kind of give evidence to describe how they are actually, how would they act within that issue. And not all candidates have information on every issue, but you could find enough candidates to get a good amount of information to see if they match up with your core belief system. And I'm not saying they're going to be perfect. They're not, but you definitely need to do some research on that and to see, make sure that you're selecting the candidate that lines up with you. And often, I think when you do that, you may be surprised at who you would pick based off of doing something like that.
That's so good. And those of you that are listening or watching, definitely that website that John just cited there, right there on the screen, www.ontheissues.org. Because there are a lot of issues that even mainstream media does not cover that are important to particular people, but we are just unaware of it. That was good, bro. So step one in judging the candidate is determining what you are looking for. The second step, you can learn more about your candidate is by going to another linked website called vote411.org. Vote411.org. What Vote 411 does is that it includes information about each office on your ballot. So we're not just talking about at a national level, but even more importantly, if I can say that, on your local level, issues that is going on in your community, in your school district. John just mentioned about taxes, what's going on in your local municipalities, with your police departments, community relations with those police departments, what's going on, who's your local senator, who's your local judges, because these are the things that make the determining factor. Who's your district attorney, rather. Those people that are going to be making and enforcing those laws in bringing these particular charges and issues that are important to you that may be plaguing your community, you have to understand who's on your ballot. It also provides this website, vote411.org, provides background information because we know media can present the filtered you. It can present to you the I woke up like this you, as we say as millennials, or the hashtag goals you. But we don't know the entire picture, so we make a misinformed decision because we are lacking information on who you really are. And so it provides candidate background information. It also provides the stances that these particular candidates are taking on issues directly from the candidate themselves. So this is not he say, she say. This is not propaganda. One candidate saying that another candidate believes this, and the candidate has not signed off on that themselves. This is verified information. It's kind of like when you look on social media profiles and celebrities that have that blue verified check mark to their profile. That's how you know it's them. That's what this website does. It provides you stances on the issues directly from the candidates themselves, and also extensive background and explanation on particular ballot questions. Because let's be honest, when you go to vote, there are some there are some questions. There are some people on there asking you to vote, and you're looking at these names, and you're kind of doing like in school when you didn't know the answer. They say what C is the best way to go. If you don't know the answer, you have a 50-50 chance. If you answer with the answer C, so we don't want to play Russian roulette when it comes to voting. It's too important. It's too critical. There are too many things that will direct us directly if we play around with it and we are misinformed. And so, John, do you have anything concerning this vote411.org that shows all the races and candidates on our particular ballot?
I think it's great. I've been on the website. It's super easy to follow, and just an overall good website for you to do some research. Another one I like as well is called ballotpedia.org, BALLOTpedia.org, and that's very similar to Vote 411. The reason I use both is because some websites you'll go to and you'll try to look up information on a candidate or on issues or so forth, and often sometimes it won't allow you to, it won't give you all the information. The candidate didn't respond, basically, is what it'll say. So sometimes you have to use multiple sources, so forth. And I don't know if it's too soon, but there's another one called ballotready.org that I really like. And what this allows you to do is to prepare your ballot ahead of time. How often do you show up to the polls and you're like, oh, I looked up those 3 judges. Which one was it that I was supposed to select? You know what I mean?
Right.
And so you can actually go to ballotready.org, enter your address, and actually 411 and Ballotpedia are similar. You enter your address and it'll bring up your local ballot. But Ballot Ready will allow you to fill it out as if you were there and then print it, and you can bring it in with you. This is not a test. You're allowed to bring notes. I think a lot of people think they have to go in empty-handed. No, you don't. I mean, it's you can bring in papers. I used to write things down, and I would show up with I had like an index card I would bring in, and make sure I didn't get anything wrong, and so forth. There's always a few everybody knows what they're gonna do for president, maybe state representatives, but after that, it's hard to remember because these are not names you're used to seeing, and often you've researched the week before, or days leading up to it. So we don't expect you to have it memorized. There's too many, and this year, that especially at least in my county, there is a lot. I mean, we have so many local seats open. It's just daunting. It's a lot, and I got to spend some time researching. But I mean, wow. So now a lot of spots have only one to choose from, so that's easy, I guess. But so anyways, so there's a few different ones. Hopefully that answers the question you were asking. I think Vote 411 was one of the first ones I've used, and I like it a lot.
That's good. I like how you said about the preparation ahead of time. and you can bring that information with you to the polling place from that
Yeah.
preparation and filling out that ballot ahead of time, so you know kind of what direction you're going in, so you're not trying to be scatterbrained and in a place of what do I do, because you're already in the place of preparation. That's a perfect uh, segue to a step three of judging the candidate, because step three is simply gathering materials about the candidate. And we kind of talked about a few of those, but doing the research, and as we've already cited, the vote401.org, which gives the candidate stances, but you also can gather sources of information on your candidate by direct mail letters, flyers, and postcards. And I know we don't do much of that anymore, but that is still a readily available resource. Media coverage, but please be careful with that. Media coverage, online, radio, television ads, candidate endorsements by individuals, organizations, and news outlets, candidate speeches, candidate debates, online candidate forums, or even town hall events are another way that you can find out about these particular candidates. And I think it's important. One of the bullet points that I just mentioned about the candidate endorsements by individuals, organizations, or news outlets, because who endorses the candidate can tell you a whole lot about the candidate themselves. You'd be very surprised that you find out a lot of these endorsements. These candidates are endorsed by racist organizations. You brought up the abortion, pro-life that are against pro-life. They are endorsing these candidates, and so if that's something that's important to you, look at who endorses it. Look at who supports this particular candidate, and that can tell you a little more and give you a little bit more insight about the candidate themselves. Did you have any thing to add to about gathering materials about the candidate, John?
No, I think you covered it pretty well. I would just let caveat when you go to the media, just understand if you listen to if anybody tuned into the episode with JD who was on with us, he is a media major and he's a media guy. And he said himself, I didn't realize until I went to media school how biased the media is, and
Right.
all of them have an agenda. He said they take a certain stance because certain stances create audiences and essentially more views, but really it's a higher ratings, and that's how they make income. So there's supposed to be a this media versus this media sort of stance, and they're supposed to scare you because that's what brings views.
Yeah.
And so it's no secret that Fox News always endorses the Republican candidates, and CNN always endorses the Democrat ones, and so on and so forth. And I hear all the time, well, this one seems to be a little bit more bipartisan. I don't know. I've never seen one that is 100% sort of, without bias. I've never seen one. So you can use them to listen to essentially stories or things that are said about the candidate, but take it with a grain of salt and then follow up your own research. So if somebody says this person said these things and they're bad because of it, follow up and get the entire story. Often you only get parts of stories, and we've seen that a lot. We just got done talking about last month about police brutality and so forth. How often did we only get partial stories, right? One person saying officers are justified, other one saying they're not, versus a bunch of different stories. And sometimes some things were protected by law, some things they weren't, but it didn't matter because with the media you watched, both of them would tell a different story based on their agenda. And so that's just one simple example. But yes, they will do that with candidates. That's why I personally pay very little attention to the media. As far as the news channels, when I say the media, and I really try to keep my mind in a bubble, and that's how I pick my candidates. So
That's good, man. That's so good. Um, another step in dealing with these issues is evaluating the candidate's position on the issues themselves. So, for instance, in the local race, interviews with the candidates can be helpful. Look and pay attention, particularly when the particular candidate is posed on, "Hey, how do you feel about abortion?" Pay attention how the candidate answers, not a clip, not a sound bite. Look at how they answer particular issues for yourself and filter it through that way. Look at their voting record on issues that's important to you, because you can even look at the candidate that's running. How did you vote on the issue that you are now particularly running for? I think that's important because you'd be surprised at how now that you are running for a particular seat, you are have one stance on the issue, but if we look at your voting record, you have the opposite viewpoint and stance. So I think that's important to also recognize that if you are saying now, because the majority, you know, that your audience is against abortion or for abortion or against higher taxes or for higher taxes, that's how you're going. But that's not how you really feel, because if we look at your record of your personal voting record, you did the opposite. So I think that's important. Collect that information, and that'll give you an overall impression of the candidates and help you to draw specific conclusion about the candidates on issues. And also, as John had previously stated, record what you've learned, because it's hard. It's easy to forget um, throughout the presidential cycles or even at your local level. You know the issues that are important to you, but over time you may have forgotten about. Oh yeah, that was important, and I may not want to vote particularly for them because they are swaying to the left or right on this particular issue. So record what you have learned and where they stand on the priority issues that's important to you. And so step 4 is just evaluating candidates' positions on their issues. I want to move to step 5, learning about the candidate's leadership abilities. And we know this is a leadership podcast. Uh, this is a very, very critical step in making an informed decision on judging the candidates on what's the facts and what's not. Learn about the candidate's leadership abilities, because oftentimes deciding if a candidate will be a good leader is difficult. It can be a very difficult. It's not always black and white. Sometimes the waters get a little murky there when deciding. This is someone that will be a good leader for me, lining up what's important to me as leadership. And so, how can you know if someone will be honest, open, or able to act under pressure if elected to this particular office? That's so important. There are some ways to read between the lines in learning about this particular candidate's leadership ability. Number one, you can look at the candidate's background and their experience. How prepared are they for the job? If you are running for the president seat, or if you are running for a governor, if you're running for a state official, what is your background? What is your political background? What are some rigorous experiences that you have had as a leader that we know that you are fire tested? Because we know that the position that you are running for, you're going to have to deal with difficult situations that have never may have occurred before. For instance, a pandemic, things that break out that we've never really faced before, or no leader has really had the answers for. How are you going to navigate on uncharted territory? Also, you can observe the candidates' campaigns. Do you give speeches to different groups, or do you only give speeches to a certain particular group? Um, because one thing that I think that we promote on this podcast is difference. It's okay. Does this particular candidate only go where they are welcomed, or only go where the particular audience is going to agree with them, or do they accept invitations to different events or organizational group settings to where the audience may question them and put their feet to the fire? And so that's important as well. Also reviewing the campaign website, their social media content, and their materials. As we've said, yeah, there are downsides to media and social media, but in the information age that we are living in, this also gives you more insight than we've ever had before to their personal lives, to how they act on a day-to-day basis. Are they a good family individual? Do they treat their husband or their wife right? Do they treat their kids right? And so reviewing their social media, reviewing their campaign website, watch their campaign development, and consider information that provides insight into the candidate personalities and leadership qualities. For example, do campaign materials emphasize issues or nice images? Because a lot of things are photo ops. Are they more caught up on sensationalism, or do you have substance? Are you more caught up on what will get you likes and shares and subscribers and people that will like you, or are you actually uh, promoting and putting forth information that will let us know who you are as a leader? John, kind of give us your perspective and viewpoint on why it's important that when we are learning about this candidate to assess their leadership abilities.
Look, I read in a book or heard something somewhere once. It said, you can fool some of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all the people all of the time.
Good.
And the hard part, it is hard to evaluate sort of the new guy on the block or new girl on the block, right? I get it. Maybe they're in the private sector and out of the public eye, and there's a new person coming in running for a seat. Often it would be like a governor, or sometimes as an elected for the presidential seat. And so I get it. Those are hard. But you can also, but I think you can, you had mentioned the website, which I was going to say earlier, I meant to say earlier and I forgot. So thanks for that. And it's a great way to look up information on them. But as far as their leadership abilities, with how readily information is available, I think we can pretty easily read between the lines on how good of a leader is this person. So if they were, I tend to lean towards candidates that didn't spend their entire career in the government, right?
Okay.
Often, because I'm not saying I'm against if someone has spent a lot of their career in there. Some people say they have experience, and I'm okay with that too. But I often like candidates who've had some experience running a business or a CEO of this company, stuff like that. Sort of like if I remember right, like a Herman Cain had spent time, CEO of these companies for a while and so forth. That kind of thing, because it gives me an idea that they've been leading in spots that they can get fired, if that makes sense, right? And as a CEO of a company, not necessarily the owner you're not going to get fired, but as a CEO, hired CEO with leadership abilities, you're sort of in a glass house, especially with a big company. Therefore, if you do anything inappropriate or anything that shouldn't be done, a lot of times, I'm not saying it's perfect, but it would definitely make the news if you were there's harassment issues or anything like that we would kind of consider a no deal. But in government, how do they lead in that area? Not are they loud or are they soft spoken? Not that way. So many people view a leader as somebody who's like leading the charge and is loud, but look at how they've been voting. So often you'll find candidates who spent their whole time in government, and on all the big issues, they have a no vote. And so you don't know how you're like, well, they haven't done anything wrong. Well, they haven't done anything, right? And so that's just as bad. I'd rather someone take a shot and it was wrong than just hang out for 25 years with no with no votes. And I'm not saying any of the candidates are that way right now. I actually, I don't know how all of them have voted because I haven't checked on all of them. But I have seen candidates in the past that spent years and years and years. They say there's no reference to how they would have been on this issue because there's never been a vote by them. And so they didn't vote for the issue. They didn't vote against the issue. They were just kind of Switzerland, or what do they call it? They were just kind of neutral. So how are they leading in government? So any of the candidates should have some kind of clues, right? Success leaves clues, as they say. And what have they done to show that they can be a leader Either they've already been a leader through government, or they've already been a leader in the private sector. Either one is fine. And you have to make that decision for yourself, how much is good and so forth. But we've seen a lot of, I've seen, people get for vice president nominations in the past, and you're like, who is this person? And then when you really look at what they've done in the past, it hasn't been a whole lot, but they talk a big game. They're great at speaking, right? And so forth. So they don't have to be loud, guys. Just have demonstrated, in my opinion, a history of leadership, sort of beyond the local soccer team coach kind of thing.
Yeah.
And nothing against that. I am a local soccer team coach. So my next office will be for the governor. No.
That's good, man. That's so good. So just learning about their leadership abilities, I thought that was interesting how you made that assertion that you looking for someone that hasn't necessarily had all their resume is in the governmental uh, background. So for me, I'm looking for maybe not necessarily all, but I'm looking for most of what you're running for. And that's what I most need to see in your history. But I think that's a good perspective that you brought to the role.
Yeah, and I'm not against at all someone who's been in government for a while. I just especially when it comes in like spending habits and so forth like that, I think sometimes if when you're in government, you make what's called third party purchases, which means you're buying something for people you're buying something with money that wasn't yours for people that are for things that won't affect you. You see what I'm saying? You have first party, it's your money, affects you. Second party, it's their money, but it affects you. Third party is kind of like healthcare. You're taking somebody else's money and you're supplying it for something you'll never use, because we all know the government doesn't actually use our healthcare system, which is kind of crazy. But and so it's called third party purchases. So I think sometimes you get out of touch a little bit with things like that, and that's the only reason I often like that, but that's not always an option. So you can't go just based on that. And if there's somebody who's been in the private sector and I look at them like I do not like this individual, then I'll totally go for the one who's been in government. So I don't have anything against it, just a little preference.
Sure, absolutely. And that leads into our next step in judging the candidate is learning how other people view the candidate. Other people's opinions can often bring you clarity to your own views. Uh, this is not to discount your own informed judgment and your own informed perspective, but oftentimes our perspective can be jaded because of tribalism, as you had mentioned earlier. Uh, the background of how we grew up. If we grew up in a Democratic household or a Republican household, we just already had it ingrained in our unconscious mind a lot of times that when we are of the age to vote, we're going to vote for that particular party because of the tribe and the community that we come from. But oftentimes, getting a different perspective and reading up and studying for yourself can provide you another perspective that can help you make a more informed decision. So seek the opinions of others, not only in your own community, but those who are affected differently by the decision of political leadership. And so we talked about that iron that sharpens iron. In order for that to happen, there has to be conflict. And so getting the opinion on a particular issue of someone that may not have been directly affected by that. Talk to a diverse group of background and positions, such as a person that's a different race than you. There are issues that as a black man that I'm looking at in a particular candidate, they're going to be totally different from John, and same as vice versa. But we can converse with each other, even though we come from different backgrounds, and say, "Hey, man, why can you help me understand why, gun rights are important to you, or why abortion is important to you? Hey, man, can you help me understand why these political issues dealing with the police and healthcare and the schooling and housing and zoning, why are those important to you? That really doesn't affect me." And so you'd be surprised when you get different perspectives from different backgrounds, how that can help shape your view of a particular candidate. And also, I touched on this a little bit earlier, but also learning about that candidate's endorsements. For instance, a candidate that's endorsed by the NRA, the National Rifle Association, would be opposed to gun control laws. And so, if you're a person that believes in that amendment that you have a right to bear arms, then you probably don't want to vote for someone that's going to take that right away from you. And you have that right as an American citizen um, and living in the United States of America to have that opinion. But it's important to find out if that's important to you or not. Get a list of endorsements. We talk about the campaign website. You go to this particular campaign website, more often than not, you can see the list of endorsements and endorsees that endorse that particular candidate that you are thinking about voting for. So you can find out those groups of people that stand for and why, the why of why they're endorsing that candidate. Also looking into the campaign contributions. Where are you getting your funding from? That's important because if you can follow the money, you can follow the core, the root of the problem. uh, we know money's not the root of all evil, but the love of money is the root of all evil. And I'm not, I won't get sidetracked with that. That's a whole other conversation. But look, looking into the campaign contribution, where you get the funds to finance your campaign. Do you use your own money to raise fund, or do you have wealthy donors? Do you have small contributors, or there is a committee called the PAC, the Political Action Committees, for they are known for groups that are known to raise and distribute money to candidates without disclosing individual or donor names. So you can do that anonymously. And so if you can find all of this out uh, from your local newspaper, or you can find out about the campaign financing from www.opensecrets.org. That'll give you resources to find out where that particular candidate, where they're getting a particular funding from. John, what's your thoughts on learning how other people view the candidate? Some of those things that I mentioned to highlight how viewing the candidate. What's your thoughts on that?
On how we say that again?
What do you think about in judging the candidate or learning how other people view the candidate? What's your thoughts on that?
Oh man, yeah. So we could test. We have testimony just firsthand, right? How often have we spent time just conversing about things
Yeah.
and how we felt openly, and within that have realized that maybe like, okay, so having a discussion. Actually, I'll share it this way. I was gonna say something towards the end. I had sent a note, but I wanted to say it right this second, actually. So it's been a little disheartening, and this is exactly a segue into that.
Okay.
Lately, on social media, I see a lot of just division and arguments, right? I hear about it too. So I see family and friends who will post a comment on there, and it may be a little brash sometimes, or maybe somebody just likes a candidate, and so they'll throw something out there for their candidate and against this one. You see it a lot with when the debates go on because people want to defend their choice and bash the other one. But all I see for really is a whole bunch of division. And I just don't, I think people don't realize that, you're allowing a government to divide you as people, right? Some of you and your best friends or your close family get these crazy arguments all over Facebook where everybody can see. People are unfollowing. And I say unfriending, we joke, oh, you can't be my friend anymore. But, nowadays that's a threat in your life, and that really does hurt you, whether you want to admit it or not. When someone close to you decides, I'm going to cut you out of my social network and probably out of my communication for a while, all because you prefer a candidate over the other one. we have to get to where we can have discussions like adults, right? Just like we tell our kids to, on issues and on topics. And then it's okay if you don't agree, but why spend so much time just and dividing each other because you don't agree 100%? Newsflash, you'll never agree 100%. I don't even agree 100% sometimes with my own kids and spouse and family members, right? But we all love each other, and that's okay. Lafayette and I used to have discussions all the time. We still do, but we used to work in the same building, one office over, and around and in quiet times or lunch hours and stuff like that, we would go and just have important discussions. That's how this whole thing started, and it would start by him having a certain viewpoint, me having a certain viewpoint. Sometimes they were way different. Sometimes they were close but slightly off, and so forth. But I mean, because we both approached it in a mature fashion, it helped us with an open mind, listen to what the other person had to say, and then we allowed that sort of we allowed our mind and our heart to stay open to what and receive what they were trying to explain to us. And therefore, like for me, from him, and him from myself. And I'll tell you what, it definitely helps navigate a little bit of what you were thinking. And it doesn't mean you have to change your mind. It just means you're open-minded to how somebody else feels and believes, because these are all good people that we're your friends and your family. They're people you love, so it's okay. Listen to what they have to say. Listen to their concerns, right? Don't be so hard-headed that whatever you think is going to be, and you can go with your gut. That's okay, but just quit arguing with everybody, especially over social media, because they like a certain candidate or they stand a certain way on a really a high tension topic or issue. But Lafayette and I we've had a lot of these discussions, and I'll tell you, what happens often is we both had a heart for the same ending. We just didn't realize that we both saw it from a different perspective. We both wanted the same result. We just saw it coming at it differently almost every time. We're both great people and we both love everybody, so we both want good things, but we just saw it from a different vantage point. And it's just because we grew up a hair different. That's all. That's it. So,
hey man, I think that was great what you just said. Um, I couldn't agree more, and I'll attest to the fact I have seen that on my own personal timeline as well, especially after uh, not the vice presidential debate, but the presidential debate. I mean, it's World War Three. Uh,
yeah, it's embarrassing.
it is very embarrassing, and like you said, what bothers me as well, it's not the people that I really don't know.
No.
It doesn't affect me. I don't have a relationship with you, so I don't lose any sleep. But people that claim to be Christians, a lot of my friends uh, that are in positions of leadership, I mean, the tension is high. And so, you have it within yourself. I have my opinions, and I've learned to keep my opinion off of Facebook. So I rather
Amen.
just do this podcast with you, bro, and inform, and we can have now. I will have private discussions with you, but the world would not know. You have my number, and I'm not just talking about me and you, but these people that I've seen and those of my friends that are listening to this, y'all have each other's number. You have relationship. You can pick up the phone, you can text, but it is not worth losing your friendship, your brother, your sister over a donkey or elephant. I mean, let's just be real.
It's so true.
you know, because if we, and I don't want to go deep here, if we would really look beyond the surface, the agenda is working perfectly.
Yeah,
It,
guys, the government, the best way for them to control a population is to have them divided.
yeah,
So,
it is working perfectly. Divide and conquer. And we are so easily swayed and naive, I would even suggest, at times to where we just drink the Kool-Aid without even using our God-given brain that He has given to us to say, whoa, 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 this is going too far. Why are you upset with one another when really you're upset at what's going on things that are really out of your control? And as a person that loves to be in control as myself, I know that's a lot easier said than done. But really, let's step aside as we get closer to this election. Do not, do not risk that you can't show up to Thanksgiving dinner this year with your family because of a presidential issue or a political issue. You can't go to Christmas because of a political issue. And so really step back and really look at who the real enemy is, and it's not one another. That's not the goal. That's not the goal. We need to unite more than ever before. I don't care if you're a Republican or not. We need to unite together. I don't care if you're a Democrat or not. We need to unite together so we can go forward and be as Dr. King has said when he said, I have a dream. When do we turn the dream into the reality? And so that's what I want to see. You know, this was the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, and the 90s. We're in 2020. And so we have to do better. Let's do better. So I just want to wrap this up, man. And step number 7 is really, we've already covered it. Step number 7 is just making that candidate report card to evaluate everything that we've already stated. And John had already said about making that preparation, making yourself a report card, reviewing that information on the candidate's views on the issue, who ran a fair campaign, what candidate demonstrated the most knowledge on the issues, and what leadership qualities are you looking for. Make a report card of those particular outlier questions and give that candidate a grade. Candidate A, candidate B, candidate C, make a report card and make an informed decision from there. And I promise you that you may not feel that a candidate has 100% agree what you just said, but I'm so glad John just said that. None of us will ever always 100% agree with each other. We're human beings. We're not robots. We're all different. And so if you're looking for a candidate that's going to agree 100% with you, I doubt that very seriously. But you can get as close as you can, and you will know within yourself, within your moral compass, within that inner voice, that wisdom that will lead and guide you to make that informed decision. John, did you have anything else that you wanted to add before we wrap this up?
No, we're good, man. This is good. This has been a great episode.
Absolutely. And so another way that you can make informed decisions and keep your mind sharp is by reading. Our read of the week suggestion this week is The Secrets of Dynamic Communication by Ken Davis. Those of you that are prognosticators and pontificators, those of you that are communicators, this is a great book to read. I read it a while back because those of you that, whether you're a speaker, you're a position of leadership, that you have to lead a certain group of people, and you're giving presentations, you're giving your sermons, or whatever particular platform that you are communicating from, we all can sharpen our communication skills. And so this helps you with the process of communication so you can perfect your craft. Listen, man, this has been another week, another episode of Unscripted Authentic Leadership. And we have surely enjoyed this episode. Before we sign off, we definitely want you that are watching and listening to not just listen to this podcast, but share this podcast and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Unscripted Authentic Leadership there. Give us a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, and give us a rating. Also, those of you that are on Facebook, you can follow us at Unscripted Authentic Leadership. There you can find us also on our second social media platform on Instagram at Unscripted Leadership. You can follow John at John LeBron and the number 3 at the end of that. And also, you can follow me at Lafayette B. Lang. Also, those of you that will stream this podcast, you can listen to it and stream it on all major podcast platforms, from Apple to Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Buzzsprout, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Amazon, and so forth. And we also definitely will put those links for you concerning those candidate information, those different websites from the ballotready.org, ballotready.org, ballotpedia.org, and also the 411.org and the ontheissues.org. All that information will be available in the description part of the episode upload. You can find that information. Those links are there for you. We are 23 days away from the election. But guys, let's continue to unite together, continue to build those bridges and not walls. Bridges connect and walls divide. This has been another episode of the Unscripted Authentic Leadership Podcast. I am your host, Lafayette Lane, and my co-host, John LeBron. We want you to have a blessed week and be the leader that God has called you to be. Until next time, God bless you.